you? I'm Cassidy Quinn, and this is Mentally Together. Because whether you can see it on the surface or not, we are all just trying to keep ourselves mentally together. And no matter what our brains are experiencing, we're not alone, we're together. I always ask you that at the beginning of every episode. How are you? But I know I usually kind of skim past it, so this time I really want to know. How the heck are you? I just made a post over on our Mentally Together pod Instagram. If you want to go leave an answer, I would love to know. Anyway, I'm extra curious because to me, right now, it seems like there is such a huge range of how we are all feeling. And I know that's always true in the world, but it seems very clear on the surface in this moment because some of us are fully vaccinated, some of us are not and don't want to be, some of us are ready for the world to go back to, quote, normal, the things we were doing and the way we lived our lives before the pandemic. Others of us maybe are fully vaccinated and still are not ready to go back to the old ways. I am definitely in that last category. I got my shots, both of them, in the arms. It's been a while, so I feel very, very grateful and lucky and privileged to be able to say that hypothetically, it should be pretty safe for me to go hang out with people, go to bars and restaurants and concerts and do those things again. But then comes the question of, do I want to? And at first, this was very much related to the pandemic anxiety of, oh my gosh, people aren't wearing masks, is this safe, yada yada. But now it's more like, okay, I've been inside with myself for 5 bajillion days, and I didn't totally hate that. And now I feel like I've discovered a new version of myself, and the new version doesn't love going out into super crowded places or staying out late drinking or having a really packed schedule. Then there's the part of me that feels like I just don't know how to talk to humans anymore and gets exhausted after trying to do that for a couple of hours. Like, seriously, every time I go socialize one time these days, that maxes me out for the entire week. And maybe you're listening to this right now and thinking, wow, Cassidy, I do not relate to any of this because I am just excited that things are opening, they're happening, this is great. Or maybe a lot of what I just said does resonate with you because the more I talk about this, the more I realize that I am not alone in feeling these anxious, overwhelmed feelings. What I'm trying to remind myself of lately is the fact that just because things are open, events are happening, people are hanging out in large groups again, it doesn't mean that I have to go do that. I get to decide what I want to do, when I want to do it, how much I want to do of it, and I can always just say, no thank you, I will be right here at home on my couch. But sometimes this is easier said than done. Luckily, I have a great guest this week to help us sort through all of this. It's Alison Diana. Alison is a therapist in Portland with her own private practice, and she's also a meditation guide and a yoga teacher. She also works in the emergency department of a hospital a few days a week with the psychiatric patients. So basically, she does a lot in the world of trying to help people and their brains feel better. I reached out to her because she posted something on Instagram talking about exactly this, the reopening pressure, having mixed feelings about things going back to, quote, normal. And feeling like, although the last year totally sucked for so many reasons, in so many ways, and obviously on varying levels for different people, maybe there's things that we learned or we kind of enjoyed through all of it that we want to take with us moving forward. So I loved talking to Alison about the post-pandemic pressure, social anxiety, mindfulness, and setting boundaries to show love for ourselves and those around us. So let's get into it with... She's a therapist, she's a mindful meditation guide, and a yoga instructor, basically all of the things related to mental health. It's Alison Diana. Thank you so much for being on Mentally Together.
Whoa, thank you so much for having me. This is exciting, a little nervous, mostly excited. I think your podcast is amazing and the message you're spreading is amazing. I'm excited to be a part of this conversation.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to have you. I was just going to say what you were saying, like I'm excited, a little nervous, is probably how a lot of people feel when they actually log on for a first therapy session. So that's perfect.
Totally. And maybe a little bit before each therapy session.
Yeah. What actually inspired you to become a therapist?
So let's see. When I was about, this is sort of a weird story, but when I was about like 11 or 12, I was watching a Barbara Walters special and she was doing the special on schizophrenia. And I had never heard of schizophrenia before.
What a deep thing for an 11 or 12-year-old to watch. That's amazing.
Yeah, pre-streaming, before there were a lot of options of what to watch.
I'm like watching the Disney Channel and Allison's learning about schizophrenia.
There we go. Disney Channel, I was all over that. Nickelodeon. I think I was in Vermont at my parents' place, and there were only like 3 channels. So that came on, and I just got lost in it. First of all, because the visuals of how, like, in the 90s they were trying to like show schizophrenia and make it all kind of like, oh, here are the hallucinations, and like they would do little images, and it was probably very cheesy at the time, but I thought that really like exemplified, and I became very curious about that, intrigued by that. And ever since then, I got a medical dictionary after that and just started learning and reading about mental health. I liked the idea of being a therapist, having an office, having a space with one-on-one with another person. But I wasn't at that time like, that's what I will do. I was still exploring other things. When I went to college, I started out as a business major, and that didn't prove to be as natural for my brain at the time, and chose a couple other majors, and then landed on psychology, took an abnormal psychology class, and became excited to go to the library, excited to write my papers. I thought, what is this feeling? School doesn't feel like a chore. It's like something that I felt very naturally engaged in and began to do well in. So I ended up majoring in psychology and in English. I also love to write. And I'll never forget a mindfulness psychology class that I took in college. And this was my first mindfulness experience. The teacher was very cool. This is in Vermont. I went to University of Vermont.
That's where my dad went to school.
UVM?
Yeah. He always tells us about the wine tasting class that he got to take there. So I don't know if that was still there when you showed up, but sounds like a great school.
I missed out on the fun things. I was doing my own version of wine tasting. No,
yeah. Just not getting credit for it.
Big cheap bottles of wine.
Yeah.
So he took us out of the lawn, and anytime a teacher takes you outside, it's like, oh, this is fun, out of the classroom, this is different. So we go outside, we're sitting in a circle, and he hands everyone a grape. And this is our introduction to mindfulness. And the goal is to as slow as possible, eat this grape and to experience the grape in all the fullness that it is. Just to savor, marinate in the grape, ate it slowly, what's it taste like, what's coming up for you. Of course, I ate the grape so fast and then peeked my eyes open. It was like, oh, oops. Okay, I'm still here. And so that was my first kind of indication and learning cue into mindfulness and the practice of slowing down and being present and absorbing into your 5 senses. And that has really, really stuck with me. And since then, I moved out to Portland to get my master's. And at that point was very confident that I wanted to be a therapist and have a private practice. And yeah, have been growing and learning and evolving in that field since.
That's so cool. That's an amazing story that it actually goes back so far.
I had a lot of social workers who influenced me as well. Like my first therapist I had in high school was a social worker, and my therapist now is a social worker. And so as I look back on my life and the narrative of my life, I piece these things together. But at the time, I didn't realize the impact that they were all having on who I would become now.
Yeah. I love that you just mentioned that you have a therapist now, because I think a lot of us think, okay, well, the therapists, they know everything and they've got it all handled. So they're like their own therapist. But I obviously am learning now, the more people I talk to, that's not the case. I mean, you guys are just humans, right?
I think last time I checked, I'm just a human.
Still there?
Absolutely. Still there, still human, still complex, and struggle with everything, that most people struggle with. So I did start therapy when I was in high school, and that was a wonderful experience. I didn't stick with it, but it helped me through some things. And then once I was in grad school at PSU, they really reinforced self-care, boundaries, and if you're going to be a therapist or just in general in the caring, helping field profession, have a therapist. And so I found a therapist through PSU actually, and she is still my therapist. Shout out to my therapist. About 10 years now, and she's also an LCSW, a social worker. And I remember I loved those classes in grad school where they were talking about self-care and talking about therapists having therapists, because it really normalized, and it went away from like learning about the interventions and the techniques and the history of psychology and micro and macro, and going into actually how to care for yourself. And that was when I actually became educated for the first time in my life on really, really the structure of caring for yourself and how important that is to avoid burnout, and how that in itself is educational and worth our time and worth investment. And I found that really exciting. And yeah, I was sort of similar to you, where I thought, oh, therapists don't need therapists, right? Because like they kind of know like what to do, because they advise other people. And now I'm like, wow, if any people, therapists need to have therapists so much. And I think it's so important.
I mean, you guys are literally like all the rest of us on the other side, either virtually or in person. We're just like giving you all of our feelings and emotions and trauma and everything. Like, of course you would need therapy.
Yeah.
It would be like saying a doctor doesn't need to go to the doctor. Like, oh yeah, well, if you're a surgeon, like you just do surgery on yourself. You don't ever have to go to the emergency room. That makes no sense. So
exactly, it makes no sense. Exactly. Or like a yoga teacher will go to yoga, will take the classes for themselves, for their own experience. And I think, again, this goes back to the mental health stigma, right? Of just sort of like, oh, and also like the power dynamic a little bit, that I definitely myself personally hope with the stigma breaking down can alleviate, of like therapists having all this like knowledge and power and being on some sort of different level, because I feel that that's not the case, at least for me in particular, and want to kind of ground down in humanity on that level, and connect in the lived experience of the struggle that it is to be a person. And actually that struggle that we use and share through empathy and our own experience with our clients is, I think, what can make therapy meaningful. So tapping into that on our own in our own therapy session is so important. Having a safe space with an objective professional just to vent is just such a gift.
Totally. I mean, I've only now been to therapy 2 whole times. I just started this month, so I was very excited, very nervous. Thank you.
Yeah.
But so far, the first session I got my homework, and it was to actually we're talking about mindfulness. It was to meditate, do some journaling. And at first it really, really stressed me out, because I was like, oh my God, now I have now I'm journaling for somebody else or for a purpose, instead of just like, I get to write everything down, blah, blah, blah. Now I'm doing these meditations with a goal versus just like to do it and to be in my brain. But then as I got closer to having the second session, I realized, oh, but actually this is super helpful, because now I have like accountability, like I have to do these things in a sense. And then B, if I get in a spiral of like, oh my God, am I getting the goal? Am I doing it? Am I doing it right? Blah, blah, blah. Like there's somebody that is then there to go, okay,
to validate.
Let's like bring this back around and let's talk about it, instead of just being stuck in my brain. So
yes. Okay. So it sounds like that structure has helped motivate you, but also felt like pressure a little bit, which makes
definitely sense. But then I also had to remind myself, like, the therapy, like the homework is not for the therapist. It is for me. So it's not that I'm, So structure,
ticket.
With my ADHD brain, like I reject structure, but then I also very much need the structure. So
isn't that ironic? ADHD just loves to get in there and just, no, you're gonna keep putting it off. No, it's fine.
Yeah.
So do you usually journal before therapy? Was that part of your
just this year, basically? I used to journal a lot when I was a kid, and realizing now, looking back on it, like there was no pressure. I could just write whatever I want. I could doodle on the sides. Like I never thought the journaling was for something. It was just like writing, and it was fun. Then now, as an adult, I started to put a lot of pressure on it, because I realized like, oh my God, like I didn't journal for probably decades, and thought it has to be perfect. I have to do it every day. If I'm going to do it, it has to be like literally every thought and feeling in my brain. I have to get it out. So I'm going to be sitting down for an hour every day. Like, when am I going to have time?
And then I just won't do it.
Right. Then I talked to more people actually through doing the podcast, and heard different strategies and different like You could just write
Ooh.
the same sentence down 100 times, or you can write all your feelings out, or you can just do a drawing. And
bullet points.
So now I've started
Yeah.
doing it. Like, it feels really good if I get up in the morning, do a little meditation, write in my journal. That totally sets me up in my brain.
You have structure. You have a self-care
be ready
structure.
for the day. Have I been doing that the past couple of weeks? No, because my house is total chaos for moving, but like,
you're moving.
We'll get there.
But the intention is there. And I think that's also important to have those goals and to know that that works for you, but to not guilt trip yourself or to put too much pressure to do it every single day, because not all of us, but many of us tend to rebel against, I think, our own rules that we set for ourselves, or get tired of them, or we're so structured, our society, go to work, eat at this time, oh, then you have this class, and then it's bed, and then wake up and do it again. So in our free time, if it's another thing that then we feel like we have to do, then it becomes feeling like pressure. So I guess it is also switching the perspective to like, this is like light a little candle, get a juicy cup of tea, like really nice pen, and you make it like, you know, a yummy blanket, and you make it something that feels really good so that your brain connects it with pleasure.
Totally. That is okay. Like, when you say that, it sounds so obvious to take the things that your brain is saying, like, I don't want to do this all the time, and make it pleasurable, like find something enjoyable about it. But that was something that clicked in my brain at some point this past year, being stuck inside in quarantine and realizing like, oh, if there's something I don't like, but I know I need to do, there's probably something I can add to it to make it more enjoyable. This one will be embarrassing, but like taking a shower. This past year, I'm like, if I don't have to do it, like, why would I take a shower?
Yeah.
But
where are you going?
Right. But like, at some point I need to do it, right? Or like, if I go on a run, like, I need to take a shower afterwards. I'm a sweaty, gross human. It
becomes to feel like a burden. Yeah.
Yes. But someone told me, my brother told me, that he started hanging eucalyptus in his shower, and then it like makes a eucalyptus steam shower. And then he said like his girlfriend came home from work and was stressed. And he put a candle in the shower and the eucalyptus. And I was like, wait a minute. Showers can be enjoyable? Okay, cool. Why didn't I think of this? So yes.
Does he hang a eucalyptus plant in there, or does he have some essential oils?
You can just buy, like, in the flower section of a lot of stores, I've learned now, you can just buy like a bunch, and then it has a rubber band. So you just like loop the rubber band around your shower head, and then there you go.
Wow. Okay, go brother.
Right? Yes, thank you, Max. Shout out to Max if you're listening. I love you. Before I started going to therapy, I heard about therapy homework. And I was always like, okay, I know it's going to be work, but like, what does that mean? For like, are there certain types of homework? Obviously, it depends on whoever your person is that you're working with. But are there certain like common types of homework or things that that come up a lot for people?
Yeah. So my feelings on homework are pretty flexible and pretty open, because again, and this is why being in therapy as a therapist is so important, because I also learned my experience on the other side as a client, and what I liked, what I did not like. And I was pretty open to my therapist that I felt so much pressure just from life and all the things I felt like I already had to do, that I did not want another thing. So I didn't want to do homework and in that traditional form, because when you leave the therapy session and you're reflecting and you're pondering and you're maybe doing a little research on something you talked about, or something comes up for you and you want to bring it up next session, that to me is all homework. It's just not like pen to paper, it's not something that you can grasp in your hands, but that may not work for everyone. But I really appreciated that at least I also had the choice. Like, my therapist was like, okay, cool. If you ever want it, let me know. But yeah, you got a lot going on. So just, come into session and we'll just see how it is. Maybe I leave. She would sometimes send me with like a question to ponder. I liked that kind of homework, maybe think about this, or like a YouTube video or something to look up. So something that was just very kind of chill but useful that I could take with me. So that really worked for me. So I bring that type of perspective and vibe into my sessions, but I try to be very transparent and continue to bring the conversation back to clients, because some clients really want it. They feel like they need it. They feel like they get more out of it when they're not in session, if they have homework afterwards. So sometimes I will actually type up questions for them, journal prompts, email it to them afterwards, and then we review it in the next session together. I'm a big fan of sending people Tara Brach podcasts or Tara Brach meditations or Tara Brach YouTube talks. Same with Brene Brown. Also book recommendations. So like, read this at your own time, but here's a book that I really think would be valuable to you given what you're going through right now. Maybe we can talk about it next session. No pressure, without the pressure piece, but again, holding the accountability and giving clients something to leave with. Sometimes clients will say, hey, you mentioned like this reframe idea and something about affirmations in session, and I can't really remember it. I don't feel like writing it down. Will you email me afterwards? And so I will do that with like a little thinking point for them so that they can return to it. Yeah. So really flexible and open on that front, I would say.
Yeah, that's great, because everybody's different, obviously, and has different goals and things. And
yeah. I've had clients have particular things they want to learn about themselves. And so they will go and they'll Google questions that are already on the internet, and then they'll bring them to session and we will do them together. So, and I value that too, because then they're kind of doing that work for themselves that they want to, and then I can meet them there and help them with what they want, rather than prescribing something to them that may just feel like pressure and less useful.
I'm curious if this is something that's come up a lot with your clients, obviously without like taking away anybody's privacy or anything, but that like for me, I feel like I'm a totally different person in my brain than I was before the pandemic began, partially because of like what I'm actually doing for work, which was very, very, very much what I tied my identity to, was my job before the pandemic. Now being like, oh, I can just like be a human, and it's okay if everyone's not like seeing what I'm doing literally every second of every day. And so like figuring out where I was masking and like presenting myself in a different way than what was like comfortable to me, but only because I was so busy all the time, and not thinking about it. But that's a sentiment I get from, like, at first I thought I was the only person feeling that way. And then the more time I talk to people or spend on TikTok and see people popping up, I'm like, oh, a lot of us feel as if we have changed as humans in the past year. Is that something that coming up a lot in your sessions?
Yes. Yeah. I think it's coming up a lot. And I also think that it's still something that is being processed. And I think that that's something that's really important for us to acknowledge together as individuals, with our families, our partners, our clients, that just because we're coming out of this pandemic doesn't mean we're not still in it. And there is so much still to be processed. And as scary as this year was, and many of us had different experiences with it. Some people actually got sick. Some people lost loved ones, lost their job, lost their housing. Some people were able to cruise through and not lose those things, but still it was a collectively traumatic experience. And I hope that people are taking the time to process what worked, what didn't work, where they grew, what they liked about it, what they didn't like, and what they want to take moving forward in this new normal that we will all be experiencing. It feels almost like we experienced a revolution together. And luckily we've been able to see now coming through the meadow, coming to the other side while still being in it. And it's shifted and shaken things up about our society, like the working from home, the not commuting, streaming concerts rather than always having to go to them. So many interesting little pieces to it like that are reshaping us. And the feeling of being stuck. And what are you stuck with? Are you stuck with the partner that things are working well? Are you stuck in some kind of a toxic abusive situation? And I think what was so interesting is that it's like time froze. In the beginning of the pandemic, I really felt like it felt like time froze and everything slowed down. It was like you might as well have seen tumbleweeds going down the street. There was no traffic.
Totally.
Everyone's at home. It's like the snow day. And that to me, as scary and unsettling what that was, I was very aware of how unique that human experience was. Like
Yeah.
every single person in the beginning was home. Of course, that began to even shift in the more middle stages of the pandemic, and for those of us healthcare workers that continue to have to go into the hospital, but it still felt so different. And that pause was so poignant to me, and that slowing down. But then it brings a lot of light to what is working in my life right now. It's like a microscope. It's like, okay, this is what you have. This is your
Yeah.
job. This is your home. This is the city you live in. This is how far away your family is that you cannot fly to see.
Because it was totally different. I mean, like when I cannot think of another time in my life where all of a sudden, like everything stopped and
Yeah.
we were at home and all of a sudden things are quiet. Like your brain gets louder. For me,
Yeah.
it's like all of those thoughts that were always like just swirling around in there, but I was always so busy. Oh my gosh, I can't slow down. And then all of a sudden you stop, and I could see how a lot of people would learn new things about themselves or start to change things
absolutely.
because they're like, oh shoot, that's what's going on in my brain that I just wasn't listening this whole time.
Absolutely. In the beginning of the pandemic, I think that was like March, I do remember feeling a rush of creativity, wanting to write poetry, feeling very connected with the fact that Mother Nature was healing a little bit because people weren't flying, people weren't driving, less was just damage was being done to the earth. And I found that to be a beautiful positive that came from the alternative of the scary parts of the pandemic. And some of my lovely friends started a queer magazine called The Quarantine, where people put in, and I wrote a poem for it called Nature's Protector. And some of my friends made art and other people wrote poems. And it was like a snippet of time, of real time, people experiencing, making art in the beginning of the pandemic. And then my friends, Monica and Sarah, made a little quarantine, because there's the Quarantine magazine, Quarantine.
I love it. Quarantine.
And my poem was called Nature's Protector, which was something I got from a Tara Brach talk that was going on at the same time, which was basically recognizing that the coronavirus is a form of protecting nature.
Ooh,
humans are just going down in the process because,
Yeah. I mean, because there are obviously so many horrible things about the pandemic. People are dying. It brought to light, like, there's a lot of bad things. Right. However, there's also some of us that kind of enjoyed the slowing down, the not having all of the social events happening, all the things that you feel like you have to be doing all the time, but you can't, never, air quotes, can't say no to. And now you get to like slow down, take a breath, maybe sleep 8 hours a night. What is that new thing that I'm sometimes only doing? But so for like some people are super excited for the world to go back to quote normal, like for all these things to happen. You can go to bars, you can go to concerts, woohoo. Then there's some of us, myself included, that are a lot on some days anxious about going back to the normal, the before times. And obviously recognizing the privilege in that, like the fact that I've been able to work all through the pandemic and that I can do that safely and be healthy and all the things. But what advice would you have for anybody that is feeling the reopening anxiety?
Yeah, that reopening pressure. My goodness. It's so interesting. So, and also back in the beginning of the pandemic, I have FOMO. Like I am a FOMO, fear of missing out person. And sometimes that helps get me into fun situations that I'm grateful I went to. But sometimes it creates this divide inside of me where it's Friday night, had a long week. I kind of just want to crawl into bed with Netflix and pizza, which I love doing that. But then there's like, a concert going on and it's someone I really want to see, and all my friends are getting together for the first time in a while. Oh, I need to be there. And it takes you away from the present moment. It creates this like lingering anxiety inside and kind of makes you not happy staying in. And then when you go out, you're sort of like, I kind of wish I was staying in because I think I'm actually tired. So you can't really win with that FOMO feeling. And when the pandemic hit, FOMO was no mo. FOMO was no mo. that was one of the first, like, okay, if I'm going to find some like positives in this wild experience, that was one of them. And so, then it came into, you get your little pod of people that you see. You choose your chosen pod, your chosen
Uh-huh.
ones of friends that either have really safe decks
Your
that you can
MySpace
go
top
to.
5.
Yeah, your MySpace top 5, your AIM
Yeah.
favorite screen names. People maybe you get tested with and then go somewhere together. Things like that. But it was a very select, small few people that you would see. And so then you get used to that and you're sort of like, okay, like at least we're just going to be seeing each other. So there's not much of FOMO around. Then as more began to reopen and people started to get vaccinated, all of a sudden, this is happening, and the pressure begins to feel. And there's like, wow, then guilt, because I would think, oh, I should be excited. I should be happy to have these opportunities to be going back to normal. But I'm not
Mm-hmm.
maybe not ready. I think some of us are feeling for like going a whole year of just wearing masks or seeing people in really reduced amounts to suddenly inside their kitchen with no mask because you're vaccinated. I mean, obviously, assuming everyone's vaccinated and practicing the CDC guidelines, but it's still sort of like taboo. Is this safe? I'm breathing. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Now we know, like we saw the videos of the germs around when we had our masks off, and now like how can I go back to not thinking that my germs are just like
Right.
floating around on everybody?
Exactly, right. When we're used to just having this screen time and all of a sudden it's back to in person. And of course, most of our lives we have been unmasked and in person. So,
Like,
it's
do I
like
have
riding
to
a
not
bike,
wear
it's
sweatpants
there.
all the time? Like, we're recording on video. I definitely have sweatpants
Oh
on.
yeah.
Like,
Me
do I
too.
have to stop doing that now? Wait, if you can see
Yeah.
my legs, like if I go
Yeah.
outside my house and you
Yeah.
actually see my legs.
I think it's about finding those sweatpants that are kind of like a little nicer
Ooh,
joggers that you
yeah.
can kind of
Uh-huh.
dress up, but still have the elastic waistbands.
Yes.
New Works has some good ones, which is where I got this shirt. Shout out to New Works.
Ooh.
So yeah, so around the reopening pressure, what I really want to encourage people to remember is first, like, check in with that feeling. Like, I have the awareness around, do I want to even do this thing that I'm being asked to do, or am I doing this out of pressure? And can some of
Mm-hmm.
the behaviors that I've been building as I've been grounding down to my own space this past year, how can I continue to nourish those creative projects, health projects, just being home and resting and normalizing that is okay to say no, to practice the boundaries that you've been working on for the past year. So
Yeah.
again, it is that check-in point, that initial like moment of awareness of, is that anxiety coming up because I'm starting to feel pressure? And then what's next? Be curious about it. Do I actually want to do that thing that I'm being invited to do, or do I want to stay home? And for those of us who have FOMO, it's still really hard to answer that question.
Yeah.
So I do believe that it is about remembering, like, well, what worked for you this past year? What do you want to take with you? And it's okay if you have mixed feelings, just normalizing. It's okay if you want to go a little bit slower. It's okay if you're holding some judgment about some things moving too fast and not wanting to be a part of that. I think that this is a complicated transition phase. And I do believe that some people are really excited to get back to it and some people are more hesitant. And I hope that everyone is grounding down and processing this collective trauma that we've experienced in the meantime and not just rushing ahead. Because I do think if there's anything that we've learned from this, well, we've learned many, many things. And one of the things that we have learned from this is that our society particularly rushes from one thing to the next. And that joy and slowing down, that forced slowing down that most of us had to do, I know created new challenges with people with kids at home and such, but just the slowing down in general that we were all forced to do really emphasize how rushed and fast paced and pressured our society really is. And so I just want to put the question out there, do we all want to rush back to that? We have a choice here as we transition back, how we choose to transition back. And if we don't want to go back to how things were before, how do we want to create a way that we want things to be that also utilizes what we've learned from this past year? If we all go rushing back to the bars and back to the concerts and back to working 8 to 5 at the office, we aren't taking with us what we've learned. I think we're at a choosing period here. So I hope that we can model with behavior how we actually want our new future to look, how we want this
Yeah.
reopening to look.
Which is so important. And
what I keep reminding myself lately of, okay, yeah, I do have a choice here. Whatever I didn't like now in retrospect about how I was living my life before the pandemic, like I don't have to do that again. Like there's no reason just because everything is open. I mean, I've always not gone to, trying to think of something I didn't do. Like, oh, just because the clubs are open till 4 a.m. doesn't mean I'm at the clubs till 4 a.m. Like just because things are open doesn't mean you have to be there. And that's okay.
Exactly. And that is okay. And I think if everybody's rushing back to do that again, it's almost like we aren't learning, we aren't growing in the ways that I think we need to as humanity, especially as Americans. I really think our country puts a lot of pressure on and really rewards people who are busy all the time and who are like plumping up and doing the next thing and moving to the next thing constantly. I think it gets rewarded and I think it stresses us out.
Hustle culture.
With the hustle culture. Exactly. Exactly. So I hope that there can be a nice hybrid and a nice balance.
Have you been putting off a visit to the doctor for way too long? Yeah, I do that too. And when I finally do call and make an appointment, the doctor's office usually tells me the next available appointment is months away. That's why I've started going to Zoom Care. With locations in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Colorado, Zoom Care offers same-day doctor visits that you can book online or from their app. Yep, you don't have to talk to anyone on the phone. They even offer mental health visits, where you can speak to a board-certified mental health provider in person or through video. Zoom Care is where I went last year for my ADHD diagnosis, and they made the process so simple. They really took away my stress. So if you're ready to make an appointment of your own, head to zoomcare.com. That's Zoomcare, ZOOMCare.com. Does grocery shopping stress you out? Do you order takeout way too often? Let me tell you about something that has really helped me combat both of those things. Instacart. With my ADHD and anxiety, sometimes the whole process of figuring out what to make for dinner, then getting the ingredients, and then actually making it seems like a lot. So now I have cut out one part of that process by shopping on Instacart. I can go online and search for exactly what ingredients I need, pick out the best deals, and then wonderful human shoppers will go out into the world and hand select everything. You can even order from multiple stores at the same time. Then it's delivered to your door in as fast as 1 hour. Oh, and probably my favorite part is that all of my orders are saved in Instacart. So then the next time I order groceries, I can just click and reorder my usual stuff. It's amazing. Is it weird to say that online grocery shopping has helped my mental health? Only if it wasn't true. To get free delivery on your first order over $35, click the link in the show notes. It lets Instacart know we sent you, gets you that free delivery, and helps support our show.
Now, back to the show.
I think another part of the anxiety side of the reopening is the social anxiety, because like I know that I've had some social anxiety before, but I was always, actually what my therapist said the other day, I was always doing like exposure therapy, because literally every day I was talking to people on television in front of people. Yeah. So like if I had social anxiety, I was being exposed to it every second of the day. Now we've all sat inside, as you referred to, like sitting on Zoom, not like we're interacting, but like it's different than being face to face, especially with like 20 people.
Right.
And I think the social anxiety has increased for a lot of us.
Yes. So back to the pre-pandemic social anxiety, but now that it's post-pandemic, it has a new flavor to it. And I know there's been a lot of articles and discussion around like people sort of teasing themselves, like, I forget how to talk to people. I forget how to make normal conversation. I know people feel that way. I have not personally interacted with one person that I'm like, oh, wow, you really seem like you forgot how to talk. I think we're all in our heads a little bit about it, not to minimize it by any means, because of course it's our experience and how we feel. And then that creates anxiety and causes us to.
But like literally all of us have been in the same scenario, I mean, besides the people that were still going out and doing everything the whole time, but like, I don't think I hang out with those people. So therefore, the people I'm interacting probably have the same thoughts in their head of like, oh God, I have not interacted with humans. What are we doing?
Right. I've not interacted with humans except for like my cat and my partner, like my mom across the country. So I think that what's important is just to sometimes go into the, I'm going to be an observer. So when I'm feeling social anxiety and I'm in a group of people and I feel like, oh, I don't want to have to be the extrovert. I don't want to be making the conversation. Like, I just don't have the energy for that. So I will choose to go into observer mode. I'm going to be like a sponge who's like processing what other people are saying. Like, I want to like observe the dynamics, and I'm going in not like egocentric and not with like, I need to have this sort of amount of tension or this story that I'm going to be telling, and more like I'm like quieting down. That for me helps a little bit. I know that could feel uncomfortable too, because it's like if we're not talking, then that can create anxiety. But
what if everyone goes into observer mode?
Everyone's like,
all of my friends cannot listen to this podcast because I get to be the one that goes into observer mode. Okay.
Yours. You go internal, you go into observer mode, and not in a way that's in your head, but in a way of just like, I'm just like pleased to be here. I'm pleased to be experiencing this. I don't have anything to prove. It's okay if I don't have anything to say, or if I'm not in the mood to talk. Like, how can I make myself comfortable in this moment? Is there a person that particularly is giving me good vibes right now? Can I go sit with them and maybe start a one-to-one conversation with them?
Yeah.
Things like that.
I love all of that. I very much enjoy the observer mode because I'm someone that usually I am like or have been in the past, like the extroverted one, even though I'm very much both. Like, and in the pandemic, my introverted side was like, yes, we are ready. We've been waiting for this moment this whole time. But the extrovert side does definitely come out, obviously. And so there's in social situations, sometimes I feel like, oh, well, they probably are expecting me to like talk and be entertaining. But then I'm like, no one's thinking that. So I can just like, it's fine if I just am not in that mode right now.
Right. I think so. And especially if we are trying to break roles that we think people identify with us, it's important to be like, if I'm always going in as party mode or whatever, then people are going to expect that. And then that will put pressure, and then that creates some social anxiety. Whereas if I go in and beforehand, I do a little check-in. So I think like any sort of check-in that you can do with yourself while you're socializing, but also beforehand, like what's an intention that I want to set for myself? Am I in observer mood? And of course, as you get there and you feel more comfortable, you're just going to be your authentic self and go with the flow and probably end up having a great time. But it's that pre-anxiety anticipation that really can get us going. And then ironically can cause us to be more anxious while we're experiencing the socializing. So the check-in beforehand, like what kind of mood am I in? And like, what would make me feel comfortable right now? Am I physically comfortable in what I'm wearing? Have I eaten? Do I need to show up with a bottle of wine? Do I have like these basic things that will help me feel comfortable? What kind of mood am I in? What kind of things maybe should be off topic? Am I going through some hard parts of my life that I kind of maybe don't want to get into? I know this probably sounds like way too much thinking, but like, what's a little one-liner that I can have for people if I've lost my job and they're going to ask me that? Like, I can be a little scripted and be prepared to be like, yeah, I'm kind of in between things and working on it, but it's okay. It's been hard, but I'm working on it. Thanks for asking what's new with you, and kind of redirect so that you feel like, okay, I don't want to be asked about this. I don't want to be asked about this. So let me have a little like script plan. Yeah. I know that probably sounds like a lot of thinking, but I do think that those are some good tools to help alleviate.
I think those are really good tips. I'm going to replay this like 10 times before every social outing that I go on now. So thank you.
Awesome.
If you're loving this episode of Mentally Together, you might be curious. What goes on behind the scenes? Which parts of the conversation were left on the cutting room floor? Well, let's talk about it. Over on Patreon, my patrons get to see deleted video clips from every episode and get to be the first to ask questions of each podcast guest. You can read all about the different tiers and sign up at patreon.com/Cassidy Quinn. Again, that's Patreon, patreon.com/Cassidy Quinn.
We have a few questions that people sent in from our friends on the internet that definitely have to do with this. So Leah says, is it weird that I want everything to change, but nothing to change because I'm not unchanged, but am I?
Oh, Leah. All right, let's hear that
So
question
lots of
one more
that.
time. That was meta.
Yeah, yeah. Is it weird that I want everything to change, but nothing to change because I'm not unchanged, but am I?
Weird that I want. Woo, this hits me hard. You are speaking my language, Leah. Oh
Yes,
my
we love you,
goodness.
Leah.
It's like wanting.
Even my dog just made a noise. We're with you.
Well, my cats are ignoring me per usual,
Yeah,
but they agree. Wow, I think what really sticks with me and kind of gives me chills a little bit is just the thought of like wanting something to change, but like not wanting something to change, not even knowing necessarily what you want to change either or how to make that change. So it like creates this restlessness, right? And so I think like first of all, I want to normalize that experience. Clearly, by our reactions, Leah, we feel very much like we can relate. It is very meta the way that Leah worded that, but I feel that it is a good example of how we feel. And again, feeling a little stuck, like wanting something to change, not knowing what we want to change, but also not even having the bandwidth or wanting something to change at the same time. So my advice in those moments is definitely just to keep leaning into what's working right now. And it's if you don't want something to change, and if that's like going and seeing people or people having parties, like we can't control externally what's happening around us, but we can control how we respond and how we handle what may be causing us anxiety. So like that could be again not going to the thing that you feel pressured to go to. That could be again regrounding in, like doing a recheck-in in my home. How can I reground into my space, into my life, so that I feel centered with myself and with what I have right now, so that I feel less perturbed and less shaken when things around me are changing.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, that is very helpful.
Yeah.
I feel that for sure. Amanda says, how can I help those that are stressed with the change, all the reopening, without dismissing my own excitement about it?
Oh, real talk.
Yeah.
Amanda, you said?
Yep.
Amanda, go Amanda. Okay, Amanda, real talk, real talk.
Because I have the opposite guilt. I'm like, I don't want to not let people be really excited that they can go do all these things again. But like, I don't really want to go to the bar with you. But I'm excited that you want to go to the bar. That's cool.
I know. I'm kind of like, go Amanda.
Yeah.
I almost envy that a little bit. I feel like that may be an easier, in a way, not to compare too much, but like, of course I feel that way because I feel I'm on the other side with you, Cassidy.
Yeah.
A little bit where I'm like, so go Amanda. That's awesome.
Yes.
And I absolutely think when someone's sharing something that we may not agree with, we just validate what they're saying, and it's okay to keep how we feel about it to ourselves. If that doesn't feel satisfying to you, Amanda, and if you feel like you want to be your authentic self and you want to share that you're excited, then you can completely just share. I understand that this is a big transition and that things reopening feels intense, but there is a part of me that's like really excited to nourish that part of my life that I've been missing for the past year. And I just hope everything feels balanced for everyone in the way that they need it. And I know that does go to like social media of like when to post. Can I post that I'm doing these things? That's another layer of all of this. Like, I'm already taking a trip. Can I post it? And what are people going to think? And I think, again, let's just go back to, this is your life, and there's no shame in how you want to live it. And there's no prescribed rules. It's your own experience and what you feel good about. And everyone's going to be having different experiences around this. And I think we all just need to be compassionate and hold space for each person's experience while being true to what we want and what feels right to us.
Totally. And I would also say, like, I would assume, Amanda, that you're also like being, like you just said, compassionate if people don't want to go do the things, like not being personally offended if you invite me to a bar and I'm just like, I want to stay inside. Like, but if you want to go on a hike tomorrow, like, cool, I'll go on a hike, but I don't really want to like go in a crowded bar. And that's, just not feeling like the other person is dismissing you and doesn't want your friendship or whatever just because they don't want to do that thing.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, that does bring up a good point, Amanda, of leaning into those other people who are ready to get a little mischievous. Yeah. There are plenty. I'm sure you got some friends, Amanda, who are like ready. So find those peeps, take them to the bar, take them dancing, and enjoy that because I mean, it is refreshing. And thank you, Amanda, for the reminder that there is there is excitement about like, I bought concert tickets today. Like I can, what, Crystal Ballroom? Like it's a little like, I can't believe it, but I'm also really excited to see Channel Trace and Polo Ipon.
Ooh.
So yeah, so I think also, Amanda, thank you for the reminder that it's refreshing. Like there is something to be excited about right now. And I think for those of us who may have a little more anxiety, sometimes we get in our heads a little bit and lose out on the moment itself and just relishing in it. And again, knowing that things will be fine. Things will be fine. Yeah.
Thank you. And then Nyla says, do you have any advice on how to adapt to not wearing a mask anymore in crowded places like the mall?
Nyla, you read my mind. I literally was about to talk about the sort of mask piece and how that is messing with my head a little bit too.
Yeah.
I have mixed feelings about this. So again, it goes back to, I think if you want to wear a mask, I think you should still wear a mask. I don't think, I mean, you can still wear a mask if you want to wear a mask. I mean, I plan on still wearing them in grocery stores. Definitely traveling. We have to still flying, but I plan on continuing to do that. And so I think that that's something to remember. Bring your mask with you. If you feel uncomfortable, put your mask on, and then maybe that'll help you feel better. And I doubt that you would be alone in that, because I do think that it does feel very quick to all of a sudden now not have to wear masks for those of us who are vaccinated. And it's good to not wear masks as much. We need to rebuild our immune systems. For the lucky ones of us, we didn't get sick this past year at all, which is great for people who did not get sick at all. But also our immune systems kind of actually need some bugs to work through in order to strengthen. So again, these are your boundaries, Nyla. So checking in with what feels good for you, bring that mask with you and wear that mask if you need to. And if it feels like it could be potentially too uncomfortable, avoid it. Is there somewhere else that you could go, like a smaller mall or the online mall?
Or like an outdoor, like the, whatever those are called.
Yeah.
Just like you, instead of like those. Inside. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Like walking around.
I forgot what malls are called now. So
outside malls. Yeah. Shopping squares. So I think Nyla, you bring up a really good point about the mask piece and how it does feel strange to suddenly be interacting with people in smaller spaces with more people without masks.
Like, wait, everyone still has mouths and noses? This is weird. I was just imagining what everyone's faces look like.
Yeah. Oh, the mask reveal is such a funny thing. It's like, whoa, look at you without your mask.
Yeah. I wonder if like masquerade parties will ever be a thing again, or if we're all like, we're kind of good. We're good on the mask thing. We're good on the hiding half of our face thing.
I like that idea. Love it.
I never got to go to one, but
hey, maybe 2021 is the year for that.
Yeah. I was just going to say 2021 seems like boundaries is the word of the year, because you've said it many times while we've been recording. And then that's something that I've started reading about. I just bought a book called Set Boundaries, Find Peace. And it's this whole new thing that I'm like, wait, what? What was I supposed to be doing this before? Like, it's just something that keeps at least coming up in my internet bubble that I live in.
I love that. Yeah. What do boundaries mean to you now versus before?
I think before I did not think about them at all. Yeah. And even hearing you say like going into a social setting, like having a one-liner of like if someone's going to ask you about this thing and it's hard to talk about, I've always been just like, I'm going to go off the cuff. And so I have a tendency to be an oversharer and just like word vomit everything. And so realizing like, I don't have to do that. Like there can be things I tell different sets of people, or like people I do talk to all the time, people I don't talk to all the time. Definitely still in a place of figuring out what the boundaries mean to me and what exactly I should be setting. Yeah.
Do you, and I have a few little one-liners about boundaries that I just love that I've gained through the years, but do you notice on those times when you word vomit that you have anxiety afterwards? Like that's part of social anxiety is you then go home and you kind of replay and you're like, why did I say that? Oh, they didn't need to know that.
Right. Like I just said, or sometimes like, what did I say that? I don't remember what I even said. How much did I say? What did I? Yeah. Oh yeah. That's definitely.
Oh yeah.
Replaying every conversation.
Yeah. Okay. So that kind of happened. Yeah. And then I also wonder if then do you kind of feel pressure to like, to share information because like we want to be interesting, we want to be connecting, we want to be nice. And maybe it
Totally.
doesn't seem as nice if we're like, oh yeah, that's just something I'm working through. But how are you? When in all reality, that's a totally fine response. But it
Right. Like
feels
you
like
can
people
end
want
your
more.
sentence at any time you want to.
Right.
I forget that. I just like need to fill the silence because I'm used
Right.
to like, we're on live TV. We literally have to fill the silence. Otherwise, it's really
Right.
awkward. So I just got
Right.
to keep talking.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Oh, so that would be a good little therapy homework for you if I was going to give you therapy homework, my little challenge. And it's what I like to do for clients too. It's more like a little challenge for the
Ooh.
next week. So Cassidy, my little challenge for you would be find those quiet moments more than usual. Make your sense if you want,
Yeah. Yeah.
make your sentences less, make what you say in appropriate situations less. And notice that little awkward silence coming up and leaning into it. I'm in an awkward silence, but this is good for me. This is good for me. Let me anchor into my breath. And then you start to
Yeah.
normalize that for yourself, I think. Make it
Even
less
in the
uncomfortable.
mindfulness class I've been taking that's on Zoom with like 20 people, every time the instructor asks for like, oh, how did that, like anyone want to say
Yeah.
something? Anyone have a
Yeah.
question or how this homework went or whatever?
Yes.
There's always an awkward pause for like 30
Yeah.
seconds. No one says
Yeah.
anything, but I have been telling myself because I have a tendency, if there's awkward silence, I will fill it. And
Yeah.
also I feel like since I'm the one that's comfortable talking all the time,
Right.
like
Right.
I can be the first one to ask a question. I will do that. But I have been
Yeah.
now telling myself I'm not going to be the first person. I'm going to wait until somebody else goes.
Yes.
And then maybe still I don't ever have to talk. If it's all flowing, I can just like be in observer mode.
Right.
Like you said, now I have a descriptor for it.
Yes.
But like I
I love
don't have
that.
to be, I'm not going to be, I'm like, nope, we are not
No.
raising our hand till at least
Yeah.
somebody else has gone. But it's
Oh,
hard. It's hard.
I can relate to this so much. And you know what? As you continue to strengthen those muscles of holding and sitting that discomfort and holding in the pause a little bit more, you'll get better at it, and you'll begin to probably like it. And you'll
Yeah.
probably begin to notice how much more emotional energy you have stored up for yourself now in the
Yeah.
quiet moments. Because I think when we give and we sort of
Yes.
please and we're kind and we fill the space that depletes us on some level. It feels good. Interacting feels good. Definitely releases some
Totally.
neurotransmitters, but I think also it can deplete us a little bit. So by practicing
Uh-huh.
that, you're going to sort of notice some other things open up for you that I think will feel good.
Absolutely. You
Yeah,
you said you had some like little one-liners about boundaries. I want to make
I
sure I
do.
give you time to say anything that you want to share. Yeah.
You're so good. So I've seen, I don't know who said this quote. I know Brene Brown posted it, but I think the quote may come from someone else. I'm not totally sure. I've been meaning to Google it. But the boundary line is boundaries are the space at which I can love you and me simultaneously.
Ooh,
Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously.
that's wow.
So
Yeah,
I
that's
love
powerful.
me, right? So when I set a boundary, like let's say it's like someone asks me to do something and I decide I really appreciate your offer, but I can't this weekend, and you feel a little guilty. I want to, I feel bad, I love you still, all those kind of feelings may come through, but you think, wow, I just chose me first. I'm loving me because staying home and finishing my continuing educations this weekend is really what I need to do in order to function at my best. And I show you that I love you by setting this boundary because when you set a boundary, I'm choosing to invest in the relationship. So when you set a boundary, so
Mhm.
that's the other little nugget is by setting the boundary, it is the distance at which I love you and me simultaneously. Because if I'm comfortable to set a boundary with you, I'm also choosing to have you in my life at where I feel comfortable. So I'm letting you know what works for me, and that's an opportunity for you to stay in my life.
Ooh,
And if that's
yeah.
not working for you, then I'm telling you what I need. And if you need to see me more, if you need more from me that I can't give, then this won't function. But here's an opportunity for us to continue to nurse relationship in a way that works for me. And hopefully boundaries come back from the people in our lives to us too, in the same way. Respect other people's boundaries as we would wish them to respect our boundaries, and really to support. That's something I really try to do if a friend is setting a boundary with me that I notice, or setting boundaries in general. I really try to affirm that and notice it and name it and be like, oh, I'm going to miss you, but way to set a boundary.
Yes.
Awesome.
I've been doing that a lot with like work related things. Like I'll reach out to somebody about being on the podcast, and there's been a couple of times where the person will respond like, I would love to do this, but either like, I'm going through some stuff right now, like just don't have the bandwidth. Can you follow up in a little while? Or I'm just really, really busy right now. And every time that happens, I like feel the anxiety for them, that in what it took for them to say that. But then I always write back like, thank you for giving me permission to set boundaries, because you just did it. And I totally understand. I will reach out to you in a while. And if it's still not the time, like that is fine. And
I love that.
So anytime somebody else sets a boundary with me, it gives me extra permission to do it myself, and like shows me how to do it. Like, oh, that's what I can say. Okay. And it didn't offend me. I didn't, feel bad that they said no, because it was nothing about me. It was them. Yeah.
I would so much rather someone tell me directly, why they haven't been texting me back, or maybe why they're unavailable, rather than ghosting, or distancing, or all of a sudden like being ignored for a little while by someone. Like that can be really painful, but I get why people do that. It's because it's also uncomfortable to set boundaries and to communicate directly, because I think people are afraid that then that causes pain, that creates conflict, when actually the distance and the lack of communication is actually like that slow toxic sort of burn that's actually more painful. So if someone can say, hey, I see your text, I don't have the capacity to text you back, but I love you and I'll give you a call when I can, or just know I'm sending you love. Like, that may feel a little harsh to say, and then that may feel a little harsh to receive, but that is the type of emotional muscles that I would like to be practicing and strengthening.
I need to practice that for sure. Because right as you said that, I thought about at least one person that is a close friend who I texted me something long and like emotional and meaningful like a week ago. And in the moment I thought, okay, I'm doing something else right now, so I should respond later when I have time and bandwidth to actually like give this the attention it deserves. And then now I haven't responded. And in my head, I haven't responded because it's so important. But now to the other person, it looks like I don't give a shit what they just said to me because I have not responded. So, and now I'm like, then I keep delaying because I'm like, well, now what do I say? Now it's been a week and I look like an asshole. Like,
well, just have them listen to this podcast. This little part.
But usually then when I say like, I've been moving or having a mental breakdown or whatever it is, like, hey, or explaining like, hey, in the moment, I always explain like, in that moment, I thought this was really important, so I should respond later, and then I forgot. I'm sorry. So thank you.
Right. And I think that's totally fine, because I'm all about not expecting people to be available all the time, because now that we're on Instagram or on our cell phones, you can email, you can text, you can see my story on Instagram. It's like, there's nowhere to hide.
Like, she didn't text me back, but I see that she's doing that thing. She's on her phone. Damn it. Yep.
Right. All on her phone. So I think that's why it's so important to like, not to be like, yes, I am, but that doesn't mean that I'm accessible and available all of the time. So I'm all about like not texting back right away, but also maybe if we feel like if we kind of get a feeling like we're not giving as much into that friendship lately and they're needing a little more, just like explaining, hey, like I just don't have the capacity, but I love you. I'm just like not texting as much right now, and sort of explaining that.
Yes.
That's boundaries.
Good. Very good advice. Woo, thank you. So last but not least, we have the speed round, the questions that we ask everybody who comes on the podcast. Okay, so when was the last time you cried?
Oh my goodness. I cried on Wednesday. Cried during therapy, and a little bit before while I was in the shower, and it felt like a release, and it felt cathartic, and just related to some changes in my life that I don't quite know how to access, but I'm hoping to.
What about the opposite, the last time you had a big belly laugh?
Oh man, that's a really good question. I laughed pretty hard on Thursday night when I was on my bathroom floor putting a face mask on, and my partner was talking about something from the bedroom. I can't remember what he was saying. And so it won't be as funny because I don't remember what he was saying, but we were like trying to figure out what we wanted to watch on Netflix. We have a projector in our bedroom and we were trying to figure out what we wanted to watch. And we were kind of kind of teasing some of the things that Netflix was telling us to watch. And I just lost it. And I recognized like, oh my gosh, I am having one of those big belly laughs right now.
Oh, that's beautiful. What are you grateful for right now?
Honestly, I know it's going to sound really cheesy, but I'm really grateful for this experience. I have always wanted to be on a podcast.
Yes.
You know, low-key one day would love to have a podcast. I'm really grateful for this experience. I definitely felt vulnerable and excited to do this. And you've just been so kind and so warm and welcome. And I feel like this is helping with my confidence. This is something that I'm going to feel like buzzing about the rest of the day. Like, oh my gosh. And so I'm really grateful for the gift of that. It kind of like shone in my day in a way that I needed, in a good way. So I'm grateful for that.
Nice. You crushed it, and I totally think you should have a podcast. What sound can calm you down or bring you joy when you hear it?
I really do love the sound of rain on a roof. So like, especially if you can hear the pitter patter like on a roof. Like we live in a rainy place, luckily, even though climate change is making it a little less rainy. And I find that very grounding and very beautiful. It just sort of, again, it's like that vacuum seal takes you just into the moment.
What about a smell that does the same thing for you?
Ooh, I love essential oils. I have this one that's like a Douglas fir smell that is it's like herbal and not too flowery, and it kind of reminds me of my mom because she loves it so much. So whenever I go home, she has all of the essential oils around. So I have it in my house too. I love it.
Beautiful. What is the best thing you do for your mental health?
The best thing? Ooh, drinking. No, just joking. Of course I want to say going to therapy because that's therapy is my therapy. But I think the best thing that I really do for my mental health is to really be patient with myself and to like allow myself to feel anxious, allow myself to feel angry, allow myself to feel insecure in those moments, and to say, well, what do you need right now, Allison? Like, what is it that would feel good for you? And just to give myself compassion and to slow down in those moments and just to be like aware, like I'm feeling uncomfortable and this is uncomfortable, but like you got this, and how can I help you feel better right now? And sometimes it's easier to do than others, but I think that helps me.
What about the worst thing, like something you maybe want to stop doing for your mental health?
Drinking. No, the beating of the self up. You're not doing enough, you're not doing it right, this isn't enough, what you're doing with your life, why aren't you already this, why aren't you already that? Then becoming ungrateful for what I have, and then becoming irritable, and then like projecting it onto the people I care about the most. That's something that I definitely always am working on, and just try to be really aware of, like, because it's all just how we think about something. And so when I'm in a more shadowy place, I'll be thinking more of like what's not working and what I don't have enough of. And then that just trickles out into everything. But if I can switch that thought and reframe that thought into what I do have and what is working, that is the avenue of my life that I want to be looking through more than the less than view. But sometimes that less than view is there, and she's been there lately. And I just also try to hold space for her when she's there.
Yeah. Oh. When do you feel most yourself?
Dancing. I love dancing.
If you wrote a biography, what would it be called?
Everybody Poops. No. Everybody Poops and me. I mean, I always like to do a little play on my last name being Diana. Like, sometimes when people ask me my last name, Diana, I'm like, yeah, like the princess. So, that could be some sort of autobiography, like the princess, but not. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
just off the cuff.
What is something you're really good at that people might not know?
I had the whole thespian side of me, musical theater and performance dancing and costumes. So I don't sew, but I I like to put costumes together. I love to do stage and theater makeup and hair. And I like to be in musical theater and in that world and have my entire life. And Portland's a good spot for that too. So definitely still could tap into that here. And have a whole costume closet and a costume chest and a whole cabinet full of stage makeup.
Yes.
And,
I love all that so much. The last one is the most random, which is if you had to get something tattooed on your forehead, like we're in this weird future world where everyone's doing it, you have to just get this like message on your forehead that's to yourself when you look in the mirror, but it's also you walk around, it's a message to the world. What would your forehead tattoo say?
And this is words. This would be a picture. It
could be a picture too. Yeah. It is your forehead. The only choice you don't have is that you have to get one.
Yeah. Okay. I think it would be some sort of animal print. Like I think it would be really cool to just have like a cheetah on my forehead, like leopard print with like diamond eyes and like or maybe heart-shaped eyes actually. And so then I'm kind of like leopard printed tattooed on my forehead, but it's like a leopard or cheetah.
Okay, most people when they do the forehead tattoo thing, I'm like, you shouldn't really get it, but that I think would actually be a pretty great forehead tattoo. And then of course, where can everybody find you? Follow all the things you're doing.
I am pretty active and approachable and reachable on Instagram, my pause space.
Or if anyone needs some therapy in Portland.
Oh yeah, and then Psychology Today. You can reach me on Psychology.
Oh, yes.
On there.
Excellent.
And you can find me on Wise Counsel's website as well.
Oh, cool. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I've learned a lot. I appreciate your perspectives on everything. And I now feel a little more prepared to like go into social situations. So that is a good takeaway.
Yeah. Just know we're all anxious together.
Yes, exactly.
And thank you, wonderful, potentially anxious human, for listening to this episode of Mentally Together. We release new episodes every Monday, so I, Cassidy Quinn, will see you next week. In the meantime, go do something nice for your brain today. Go try a meditation, go to therapy, work on setting some boundaries, whatever will make your day just a little bit better. Oh, and if you are interested in trying some meditating with Alison herself, she's actually right now working on recording a chakra meditation album. She and her friend Chelsea Unicorn, so obviously this just sounds amazing to me, will be using sound waves and a meditation for each chakra. She also teaches pause and sculpt yoga classes on Zoom a couple of times a week, so if you want to move your body in a mindful, calm way, you can check that out. Just follow her on Instagram at pause_space if you want more info on any of it. Because remember, we are all just trying to keep ourselves mentally together. Mentally Together is produced, hosted, and edited by Cassidy Quinn in collaboration with Koba FM, a podcast network that is all about community, baby.